as we talked about, the racial weapons and armor here, they won't be race locked, but they will reflect the racial appearance you're doing, right? Um, it says racial appearance of gear is focused on armor, not weapons. Even though we did see that weapons races did.
Yeah.
There was differences there. Um, yeah. So it says yeah. So I'll go and let you read that, Missy, the customization part.
Okay. The customization of equipment per race is really focused on armor sets, not weapon props. Weapon props will, from a model standpoint, will translate pretty one-to-one across the races. Let's say, for example, you have the Eagle set or something, right? The Eagle set has, in art, it has a thematic design that's going to include certain attachments to the armor. It's going to include cool color palette and theme. It's going to have some aspects to it that define it as the Eagle set. When an elf wears the Eagle set, or when an orc wears the Eagle set, you obviously have two different cultures there, and you don't want to stomp out that culture by assigning a de facto. This is the Eagle set, and this is how it looks on everybody. What we want to have is cultural influences play a role in showing how that set looks.
Yeah.
So the racial appearance of gear sets is tied to the character model of that race.
Yep.
When you say, what if I'm an orc but want to look like an elf and I want my eagle set to be the elf representation? Well, the issue becomes there that orcs have a different organic model. Their body is different than that of an elf. So, from a scope creep standpoint, it's one thing to add different influences that represent the cultures that are donning the armor. It's another thing to adapt each influence as a matrix that can be worn pretty much by everything. From a scope perspective, that's a very difficult task for the character artists to kind of tackle. So instead, what we've done is, in order to facilitate a variety of cultural representation between the races, but allow for the sharing of assets, like different armor sets, we give different representations of those armor sets to each race.
Yep. So we saw that in some of the other ones. Same armor set. It just changed. It looks the same from far away, but when you get closer, you'll see that it's definitely
Like,
different. So racial benefits. Each race has different base stats. Um, Races are not gender or class locked. Some classes may work better with certain races, but nothing is enforced. Um, so, for instance, a mage technically might actually be better as I'd almost probably say a human, probably a Empyrean elf. Being I almost think a Pyre elf, which is sad because that's when you're looking at Missy. For me, I don't that right like the
they're
Empyreans
more like
say
rangers.
yeah the Empyreans more say I'm magic, you know, versus like even the um, forgetting the we scroll up a little bit here. We have so many different races. The Kalar, to me like spits out magic, right? Um, so yeah, so I think that's pretty cool that some things will be better for that, but you can still be it. Let's see. A player choice of race will influence the racial augments. Like I said, augments are the things that are going to be like fire spell, but this augment means that you're augmenting, changing that spell um, to be a little bit different. So a fireball from a human's going to probably look different than a fireball from an orc, if that makes sense, is what I'm kind of reading here. This is, I guess, Missy, if you want to read, you'll have racial.
Yeah. So you'll have racial augments that are capable of being applied to active skills, and those augments are going to be a reflection of the flavor of that specific race. In addition, races will have differing degrees of stats, and our game in our class system relies on certain stats to achieve different metrics in the game when it comes to damage, defense, and landing rates, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So stat growth.
So I'm thinking like a fireball. So if you throw a fireball as a human, it may come out like I don't know, it might actually have like a symbol to it or
A
something.
lion, something like that.
Like a lion, like almost like a roar out or
Yeah.
something, and then an orc might have something completely different, like a beast, like a different kind of beast that shows up or
So
something.
almost like a fireball would almost look like, um, like a, I don't want to say uncivilized because orcs can be civilized, but like a rage
The
fireball
orcists.
versus like a human or an elven fireball would be like a sleek little fireball, right?
Yeah,
But still
they'll just
powerful.
take on some sort of different appearance. They'll do the same thing, but they'll just
Yeah.
look different.
So stat growth proceeds in the following order. The race seeds a player's base stats. The primary archetype grows the base stats. There you go, Missy. The second archetype class does not contribute to stat growth. So that means, like I said, your secondary class that makes you your full like class, um, like a mage and a sorceress, you become a warlock, for example. Um, yeah, so your second, and I think they did that to probably give you the freedom of changing it without really changing too, like for them to have to really balance out stats because that's going to be a pain in the butt. Choice of profession does not affect a player's stats. Gear has approximately 40 to 50% influence on a player's overall power in the game. So that's pretty cool. So I mean, you could 50, 50 or 60%, how powerful you are is just based on your character. Um, racial augments. So racial augments are based on a character's race and are available to each class. These apply to abilities on a character's primary archetype. They affect how the ability works and can also apply cosmetic effects. See, Missy? There you go. See. Yeah, see. All right. It says in the keeping. Go ahead.
In keeping with our theme of consequence, and unlike other games, race won't just be a matter of look, with relatively inconsequential abilities tacked on. Instead, they integrate deeply into our class system, augmenting and changing the basic chassis provided by our 8 core archetypes. Our goal here is to create a system where an elven fighter feels different, but serves the same role as a dwarven fighter.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think like some things.
Kind of like what we were saying.
Yeah. To me, like I said, I'm going to definitely reflect my class to my race that I'm making. Like, if I'm going to make a Polynesian dwarf, um, I can almost see myself being like probably like a ranger, like hunter, like a hunter probably. Um, yeah, we'll have to look at the classes when we kind of go through that again. Racial influence on nodes. If you guys didn't know already, nodes are the heartbeat of this game. That was our first deep dive. Let's go check it out, guys. So node layout and style is determined by several factors: location of the node type, race that contributes the most to the node's advancement. We were talking about that earlier, about the looks and everything like that come from the percentage of how much of that race is actually contributing. Racial appearance of the node's buildings and NPCs. This applies to all nodes, including castle nodes. The rest is determined by the node's mayor. Some parts are determined by the area it's in. Some parts are determined by the type it is. Some parts are determined by the race it is, and the rest is determined by the mayor. So that's cool. So the mayor even has the ability to kind of like, I think an orc building would look better here than it should be weird. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that actually comes all together. That's why we vote the mayor out after 30 days. Building stupid
You picked
buildings.
the ugly stuff.
Yeah.
You're out.
Get out. All nodes, whether they're associated with the castle or associated with normal node structure, has cultural influences that replicate over to the buildings that are produced and the NPCs that are present. So one day, technically, if your node has a bunch of different people, a bunch of different races, but you go in there one day and there's orcs, and then you go in the next day and there's elves. It's gonna be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
There's an alteration mechanic that affects experience and influence to curve a single race from dominating the entire world. So there you go. See, that whole like world manager system that they have in place.
Yep.
I guess, Missy, there
Oh.
is.
There is an attrition, and that attrition on experience and influence is heightened based on the performance of the race in the world. So if all these nodes are orc nodes, then their attrition rate is very high to compete with the cultural establishment of new nodes because they have more influence in the world and a popular opinion is against them in their outlying regions that they do not have influence in.
Yep. So starting zones are located in ruined cities of the four ancient races of Era. That's what we said before. Starting areas are located near one of the four divine gateways, where players spawn into the world. The Tolnar, as we said, can choose a gateway, or they just come out of the ground. Starting areas do have some distance between them, which is good. I think spreading them around and kind of seeing how people kind of migrate and all that other stuff. So each race has its own starting area. Players may choose their starting gateway regardless of choice of race, so that's cool. Points of interest exist that represent Tulnar NPC structures in a similar fashion to the starting areas around Divine Gateways. Starting areas include expeditionary NPC settlements that serve as initial quest organization points. Origination points, yeah. It is 2:30 in the morning, guys. So forgive me. Lore-wise, these settlements represent scouts that were sent ahead of the main expedition back to Vera, so they were the guinea pigs. These settlements are designed to
Acclimatize.
Acclimatize. That is a new word for me, guys. That's a new word. New players entering the world. While it may be advantageous to do so, there is no requirement for players to play through a specific starter zone content. Starting areas are not tied to the node system. Yeah, we talked about that, Missy. But hopefully they have some sort of, like, you can kind of build it back, but sounding like it's not. I think it's going to be, got to get out to the real world for that. But, all right, a problem, Matt?
A problem that a lot of MMOs have is that those starting areas become just kind of vacant of players, and it's so sad because the greatest aspect of an MMO is that community that you get to experience. So one of the great things about the node system is that it really works from new player acquisition standpoint, where these nodes tend to develop larger near the starting location areas around the world, and it brings these players back to those locations if they're citizens and want services within those cities. So, as new players enter the world, they're going to actually be surrounded, most likely, by more population because people are coming back to those larger nodes.
And so the Tolnar starting area. So it doesn't involve a divine gateway, which is, of course, because you never went into the divine gateway. But you can choose it, so that's good. Like I said, we didn't want to start there. But so you'll be starting in the Underrealm, and that'll be kind of where you start. I mean, for me, my Tolnar, I'm gonna start in the Underrealm. I won't start at the Divine Gateway. So
Why would you?
yeah, I'm just
I wouldn't.
yeah,
That's the point of them.
yeah. So yeah, so that's that. Looks like the Alpha 0. So what they're doing right now is the Empyrean Divine Gateway, which is the pretty one, of course. All right, racial quests. Quests may be based on a character's race. Different quests may relate to who the primary culture contributor is to a node. This won't lock out content, but will add flavor to the quests. Like I said, this game lives and breathes by the players who play it. All right, Missy, you're on.
There might even be different directories of the quests that exist for specific races. And even though you're sharing a quest to kill a boss, if you're human and I'm an elf, I will have a different arc potentially that leads in a different direction than you, even though we took the same quest. And this can relate to who the primary cultural contributor is to a node, unlocking different arcs for cultures that share the primary culture of a node. Not that locks out content, but it gives a flavor in a different direction so that not everything is so cookie cutter. Race matters because narratives have paths that also are influenced based on the primary contributing culture to the node. If you're a Nikua and you have a Nakua node that's predominantly Nakua, you're going to have certain services and or abilities as a member of the Nakua race that other races may not have access to. They may have alternative quest lines, but they won't have specific ones. Now, those specific Nakua quests will then relate to the meta-narrative that's present in the world, and they'll start to direct some of that meta-narrative. And that'll be beneficial for your kind because it will unlock certain content for your race that other races haven't unlocked yet. So there is an incentive there to see progression along that line now in order to curb the progress of a dominant race.
Yep. Which is an amazing fact. Like, that just race. That's why, like, so we're spending a lot of time on this, deep diving the races. We've done like 3 different videos on them. There's just so much about your race that even quests are affected by. The world will be affected differently from playing an orc or a dwarf or a human or an elf, and also the different types of those races themselves. So quests that are race-specific, title-specific, or guild-specific will likely be less than 10% of the total number of quests. 90% of the quests should be able to be shared by everybody. So, you know, they say 10% right now, but I mean, they could have 1,000 quests and it's 100 quests, you know, that are, you know, race-specific. So I think we'll be good there. NPC race. NPCs are going to react differently to different tags on a character. For example, elven NPCs may interact differently with humans compared to elves. So that's cool. So that definitely brings the world alive more, you know, because an elf merchant shouldn't treat a human, you know, which they think are probably lesser beings than them, especially dwarves. Yeah, especially dwarves. An elf merchant probably wouldn't even work with the dwarf. Or if they did, it'd be very like, what do you want? You know, so we'll see. Story of creation. Go, Missy.
The story of creation tells us of a race of beings known as the Ancients, created in the likeness of what was once the Ten. The Ten imbued all of the qualities into one race to have stewardship over all of creation. The power of the Ancients grew, and a rift divided the Ten in how to accommodate their new creation. 3 of the 10 separated from the others and began to teach the Ancients the secrets of the essence. When the 7 learned of this, a great celestial battle ensued. Eons passed, and you watched as the fight continued within the celestial kingdom. Some say it was the fight that created the stars in heaven we see today. With every blow between the 10, a star was born. When the battle was complete, the others and the Ancients were banished by the 7 into the void. The 7 found the error of their ways and decided to split their qualities into 4 races instead of 1, and this is how the humans, elves, orcs, and dwarves came to be. You watch as the 7 created Vera and placed each of the races within their respective locations. As the story came to an end, a dark figure at a distance grew closer to you, until all you could see was the darkness, and you wake up in a sweat after a nightmare.
There you go. Sweat of a nightmare.
Sweaty.
Oh, right. Well...